So, Dr. C, the principal of the college, Dr. Rekha, senior faculty, other faculty of the college, participants who include research scholars, students, or just people who are interested in education, quite a few of them. And I see a fairly large number of my students, old and new. So, and this is my, I see Pradeep here on the screen, my student at Kannur University. So, this is my first webinar presentation, in fact. Although you wouldn't believe it, this is my first webinar presentation. By law, by rule, I should be nervous. In fact, I am nervous. I see a number of my students here. So, if I say something quite foolish, I think I'll be taken to task tomorrow. Okay, never mind that. So, I'm supposed to talk about technology and pedagogy. I wouldn't make this a very formal address. It is neither necessary nor desirable. I'll just talk about a few things, say for about 15 minutes or so, a little less than 1 hour, under 1 hour. And then you can fire your questions, your suggestions, comments, anything that comes to your mind. And you can also type your questions as messages. And you can see that on the screen, chat. So on chat, you can type your questions. You can even do it now as I am speaking. So I'll try to address these questions at the end of my presentation. All right. So yeah. So because technology has come into play recently on a large scale, we are talking about online classes everywhere. We are talking about online classes for school children, okay, even for pupils in the primary section. And of course, we have online classes for students at the tertiary level, colleges and universities. So everywhere, from bottom to top, we are talking about online classes, digital technology, the employment of digital technology in education. So I should say at the outset that technology or digital technology is not the answer to everything. Of course, all of you know that it's not the answer to everything, but somehow this impression is being created. Okay, you are tech savvy and you are everything. No, I don't think such a statement is tenable. Okay, now these classes at the school level and at the tertiary level in colleges and universities were started because of a very pressing reason. Because we cannot sit in the kind of conventional classes we used to sit. We cannot sit 20, 30 or 40 in a class without coming into undesirable contact. I'm using the word undesirable contact. It might mean other things, but here I mean specifically the kind of possible infection that you would be susceptible to, you know. So that's why we are going in for online classes, which do not necessitate direct contact. You are listening to a class, you are listening to a lecture in the distant mode. Fine. Now, the first question that was put up when the proposal for starting online classes came was whether students have access to digital technology, whether they have adequate connectivity which would enable them to log on. This was the first question asked. And there was a big hue and cry about what was called the digital divide, you know, the big divide. Okay, a divide as, as difficult to manage as the divide between the rich and the poor. That is the classical divide. Here you have digitally rich students and digitally poor students. So how can the digitally poor students manage when online classes are offered? That was the question. So I believe within the first week of the after the beginning of the online classes, a survey was taken. And in this survey, it was found that a little more than 2 lakh students in the state had virtually no access to the net. All of them, did not have any digital devices with which they could log on. This was what was discovered. But after the figures were announced, there was a concerted effort from the part of the government as well as civil society organizations from local bodies to provide access to the net for these students. And if you look at it very closely, if you look at what happened in Kerala during the floods of 2018, you would find that this is not a Herculean task as some people make it. It's quite possible. There are a number of public institutions. There is one in nearly every ward, okay, where digital devices can be set up, where connectivity can be provided, so that students who have no access to either digital technology or the net digital devices or the net can log in there, of course, by maintaining the required social distance. It's quite possible. And it is happening all over the state. It is happening in remote places. It is happening in tribal areas. So what is necessary is the willpower to bring it into action. So that, I think, is the core thing. You have digital technology at your disposal. You have the manpower. You have the will as represented by the government and social organizations and political parties. In fact, there was a scramble, a competition among political parties to leap into the fray, to provide access to these students. So that part of the whole issue, I think, is settled. Nobody would say much about this digital divide, at least in our state. I'm talking about Kerala as an area where digital technology, where online education is brought into play. But there's a more serious divide, which did not come much into the news. The divide between teachers who are capable of handling digital technology and those who are not. Okay, so no figures are available. But I believe, as a person who has traveled around, talked to teachers at all levels, from primary to the tertiary levels, I believe that there are a large number of teachers who still are shy of using digital technology. There are some, of course, very distressing thought, who are not even able to type on a lap or a desktop computer. Distressing, in this age. But there are people. There are people who can use their smartphones only for conversing with their friends or relatives, for nothing else. The phone would be smart, okay, but the users are far from smart. So this is the contemporary situation. So I think people who are unable to use digital technology, teachers who are unable to use digital technology would certainly number more than this 2 lakhs of students. Teachers, I'm talking about teachers. So this digital divide has to be addressed. And it's not just that teachers are not familiar with digital technology. It's all around them. I think the most important problem is their unwillingness to use it. If they are unwilling to use it, if they think that digital technology is not necessary, I don't think anything can be done. So the question is to address this particular reluctance on the part of teachers, that they find it difficult to, they are reluctant to use it. They find it rather, for some teachers would take pride in saying that I don't know how to use a smartphone. Okay. So this is taken as a matter of pride. So I think that has to go. And for that, I think a wide campaign would perhaps be necessary. Because now that online teaching learning is introduced, many teachers are forced to do it. And you can see the kind of scramble that is going on. You can see the kind of frightened running. You can see the kind of the kind of fear that is written on the face of many teachers. I think this is the most fundamental problem when you talk about digital, talk about the digital divide. Okay, and there are other issues which are equally important. One is, would digital technology make teachers unnecessary? Okay, a startling question, because I'm also a teacher. Many of the participants in this webinar are teachers. So would digital technology make teachers unnecessary or surplus at least? Okay, so this was raised by many people. So if you can play the same video next year, why should there be a teacher? Okay, to transact it. You can just play the video and the learners can listen to it or watch it, and okay, they can just appear for the exam. This was the idea. Okay, now I think there is some truth in this, okay, which even many educationists have expressed openly, which is that we teach our students too much. Okay, there are many teachers here. I can see some of them smiling. So there must be an element of truth in this statement. We teach them too much. Imagine a student sitting 7 hours in the class. It's what's happening for higher secondary students in the state. 7 hours a day. For my pre-degree, which was equivalent to the current HSC, I barely sat 2 hours in the class a day. Okay. If I was forced to sit for 7 hours, most probably I would have landed up in some mental asylum. Fortunately, I didn't. So this over-teaching, where the students can look after themselves quite well, where they can be self-reliant in learning, we are forcing ourselves on them. Okay, so I think this has to be addressed. So in that sense, and if they have access to material they can find anywhere on the net, and by this time, let us say, by the time they are in the high school, I think they are quite familiar with digital technology, unless the parents have done something drastic to stop them from using smartphones at home, which I don't think they are successful anyway. Our kids have a way of using smartphones, even if their parents clamp down on the use of smartphones. So I think, I suppose all of you saw that video, at least some of you, of a small child, about 3 years old, just 3 years old. I can say with certainty because she is my nephew's daughter. So she was listening to that presentation that went viral by a teacher called Shweta, narrating the story of two cats, Tangu Pucha and another Pucha. So I could see this child nodding her head. Then occasionally when the teacher says, "Ini ellavarum Tangu Puche vilicholu," then she would call Tangu Puche. So this shows that she was listening to the whole thing. She could connect with what was going on the screen. Okay, so she's only 3 years old. And there are many such 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in Kerala who can use smartphones. This girl can use smartphones very well. She can even log on. She can browse the net. Okay, and she would say things like "Ayo netilla," and then she would play some other video which was there in the mobile's internal storage. So this is more important. That is, when the learners acquire the capacity to look after themselves. When the learners can get learning material from the net, from various sources, then certainly some teachers would become redundant. So this is a very frightening equation, shall I say? Because you can say, it won't be frightening to me because I'm retiring in 3 years' time. I often say that. But I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about the teaching fraternity in the state, this threat. But how can this threat be overcome? Because I think teachers, people who have attained this level of education, they have a lot of work at hand. And they have not been put to such work. Research, surveys, taking leaderships in local development projects, a lot of things. In fact, there are not enough people, I would say, to do all this in the state. So instead of just teaching, instead of going to a classroom, standing there for 45 minutes, talking to students at random, okay, assuming that things have been taught, things have been learned, and then going home. Okay. So I do think this is just a proposition that I'm offering. I don't know how the teaching community would take it, because I myself, as a teacher, I have been at such activities quite a lot. I would say I was one of the resource persons at a at a school in Kerala where a project was implemented. I had to write a report, not me alone, but along with a few of my research scholars. So they took about a week or more. We paid some 3 or 4 visits. We examined the entire setup. We talked to the new teachers, everything. So there are hundreds of such projects coming up, assessing the learning levels of students, looking at how education can be localized, preparing materials, resource materials for students. So teachers will not be without work. I feel there are not enough teachers to do all this work in Kerala. Only thing is, such tasks, such a mission has not been undertaken by the government so far. It ought to be undertaken. So then you will see how teachers become valuable assets for the community. Okay, so teachers are not going jobless. They will go jobless if they stick to the same kind of rigmarole which they are at now. On the other hand, if they willingly adopt more tasks like this, if they choose to become creative, I don't think they'll be ever without work at all levels, in schools, in primary schools. So remember the controversy about Anganwadi teachers. Okay, people pointed out that Anganwadi teachers were performing very important tasks for the community. Not just looking after children. They are not ayahs. You must know that. Okay, they gather very important information about the children. They pass it on to parents. They have a way of observing them. They in fact serve as the community's representatives in the upbringing of children. Okay, and many of them are well educated. Okay, so you see. So I don't think they are in any way inferior to a professor in a university or a college. No, I don't think so. Because the kind of work they are doing, the kind of service they are providing to the community is very important. Okay. Now, yeah. So I was talking about the ways parents restrict their children from using digital devices, from logging onto the net. Okay. So the standard argument is that it will spoil them. Okay. Okay. So there are many other ways in which children can get spoiled if they want, or if they happen to get things into their heads, not necessarily the net. Okay. And over a period of time, once they are new to it, of course, there will be a rush to look at certain videos which we think are not suitable to them. But over a period of time, things will stabilize. Okay. And already I have seen many children using smartphones. They of course, they log on to such sites which provide them good entertainment, funny videos, okay, some clips from films, all those. But on the way, they can also be asked to look up certain interesting learning material. So restrictions, there are, I believe, many colleges which don't allow their students to use the mobile phones within the campus. They have to keep them in safe custody with their teachers or the principal. Okay, and there have been cases of mobiles being misplaced, lost. Okay, somebody carrying off somebody else. All kinds of muddles happening, all because of this mistaken notion that students oughtn't to use mobiles. So one poet actually wept. Kuttigalkku mobile koduthu cheethayakkaruthe. You know her. All right. So this is happening all over. I think this resistance, this restrictions on the use of digital devices, restriction on children logging onto the net, I think this should go. Of course, you can think of monitoring what they are doing to some extent, but not restricting, not barring them from using the net. So I think that way, if you make them digitally literate, digital literacy is important. Okay, as I said, that is the real divide. The divide between people, who have access to the net and those who don't. And more importantly, the difference between people who have access to the net but who are prevented from using it, and people who have access to the net and are allowed to use it. This is the divide. This is, I think, is the more important divide if you take children. Okay, and if you take teachers, as I said, the people who can use them and the people who don't use them, and the people who prefer not to use them. Okay. Now, yeah, about how online learning can be effectively done. So online learning is not simply a replica of an ordinary conventional classroom. So I have seen such classes. For example, you give the students a particular timetable. You ask them to log on at 8:30. Okay, for school children, this is okay to some extent. They have some kind of discipline. They log on at 8:30, and you can mark them present. Okay, but is there a similar logic when you're talking about students in colleges and universities? Is there? I don't think there is, because at least at that level they should have some flexibility in learning. Okay, they should be able to access the learning material at their convenience. Okay, so I think I do it. My students are here, so when I send a clip and I send a lecture to them, I ask them to look it up. I ask them to listen to it or watch it, say in 2 or 3 days' time, and then send feedbacks. Probably I'll call them for an interactive session. Okay, in which they can either speak to me or leave voice clips or written typed messages to which I can respond. Okay, so this flexibility is very important. Even for, say, students at the high school level, not primary school students, who are capable of doing all this, who are capable of leaving voice messages or chats, I think they should have this flexibility. Okay, this is very important. So here is the link between technology and pedagogy. Okay. So as I said, if you simply change the technology, or if you introduce technology where it did not exist, it does not mean that you are actually changing things from the point of view of teaching learning. So what is happening in a current classroom? Okay, you have a teacher, especially at the tertiary level, at our level, in colleges and universities, a teacher talks for about an hour. Okay, so we talk for 2 hours. Ours are 2-hour classes. Yeah. So I think my students know how tedious it is. Okay, if you listen to a person for 2 hours, if you are sorry, if you are forced to listen to a teacher, yeah, you have no option. And a 2-hour class with no interaction at all, virtually no interaction. There are no questions asked. There is no discussion between the teacher and the students or among the students. Okay, you just go home, or you just go for a cup of tea after the class, and then you refer to the notes which you have made. No interaction at all. So without interaction, at least at the tertiary level, without a good interactive session in the classroom, I don't know how effective education at the tertiary level. And there are some teachers who are positively against such interaction. They are angry if you ask them questions. Okay, they'll say. This is a practice which is common in schools, but also not unknown in colleges. Teachers who don't like questions asked. Okay, so this is fundamentally what should change. So my question is, do online classes change this? Do online classes change the conventional teacher-student relations? Okay. And the experience is quite often that it doesn't. It remains the same. The student-teacher relationship remains the same. Does not fundamentally change. Okay. And other things, notions about learning. What do you think about the process of learning? How does learning take place? Okay. Is, for example, knowledge transferred from the teacher to the learner? In fact, our language shows clear traces of our conventional thinking about education, learning. So when you say, അറിവ് പകർന്നു കൊടുക്കുന്നു, അധ്യാപകർ, okay, ആയിരക്കണക്കിന് കുട്ടികൾക്ക് അറിവ് പകർന്നു കൊടുത്ത അധ്യാപകനാണ് ഇന്നലെ വിരമിച്ചത്. Okay, you find this sentence in dailies, or when a well-known teacher dies, you find it in the obituary. Okay, so this current pedagogy, by current pedagogy I mean the pedagogy that is accepted all over the world, that has become standard in many Western countries and which is being reluctantly introduced in our society. It would say that it is not transmitted. Knowledge is not transmitted. Knowledge is constructed by the learner, the student. The student constructs knowledge as pedagogy. Would tell us by using already existing knowledge, by taking in cues from the surroundings, by interacting with your universe of discourse, by interacting with your peers. And when you talk about social construction of what the Russian pedagogue, educationist and philosopher Lev Vygotsky talked about, when you construct knowledge through social activities, because language is primarily, we know, a social construct. So similarly, the knowledge, most of your knowledge, in fact, is socially constructed. And if you ask me where you can find knowledge, I would say knowledge exists only in your brain. It doesn't exist anywhere else. What you find in books is not knowledge, but simply data. Okay, from which, of course, you can construct knowledge. So this notion of knowledge. So online learning, many students would say that if you record a teaching session, okay, and which would virtually mean that you are acquiring knowledge. Okay, you have it in your system, you have it in a pen drive. Okay, you have acquired knowledge, people would say, but this is not what happens. And we must also know that all knowledge is interconnected. Okay, so the fact that you know something about a tree having rings, they call annual rings, which would show the age of the tree, and of English having 26 alphabets, 26 letters in its alphabet, are in some way related. This is how things connect. Okay, so if we know this, all knowledge is connected, all knowledge is constructed, and the most important point, I'm coming to that a teacher is in fact only a facilitator. Many B.Ed students know this already. I need to repeat this. So once a student realizes this, that knowledge is constructed, knowledge is not transmitted. It is constructed by the learner. It is constructed with the help of peers, teachers, the environment, the universe of discourse. So once you know all this, you have a particular frame which becomes useful for you in future. So the problem is it's difficult to reach this frame from conventional thinking. Okay, from worshipping the teacher as the guru. This is a very serious problem, I find. Okay, you can like a teacher, no problem. Okay, many teachers are like. Some of my students have even told me, of course, jokingly, that they love me. Fine. Okay, no problem there. The problem is when you start worshipping teachers. When you start worshipping teachers not for any extraordinary skill they show, but for just being your teacher. This is the fundamental problem, I think. So once you realize that this is a very difficult statement to accept. Okay. Now let me talk about a very closely connected thing. Okay. How many of your students have you advised and let us say brought to the right path, right in inverted commas? Okay. Because you can rewind. You can think back, and especially senior teachers can think about it. I don't think I have done this to any single student. Okay. Nobody has become better students or better human beings because of my advice. They have become good students or good human beings for because of a number of factors, in which maybe, okay, as Salim Ali said, the drop of a single feather changes the universe. Fine. Okay, I agree. I admit that will happen. But fundamentally, I never claim. Okay. Although this is not what parents think. Okay. മാഷ് പറഞ്ഞൊന്ന് കേട്ടൂടെ നിനക്ക്, അല്ലെ ടീച്ചർ പറഞ്ഞൊന്ന് കേട്ടൂടെ നിനക്ക്, നല്ലല്ലേ നിന്റെ സ്വഭാവമൊക്കെ മാറുക. No, nobody's character changes. I don't think now many people are under this misconception that they would change simply because they listen to a teacher's advice or follow a teacher's advice. Okay. So this realization that we are in some way not what we thought we were. We are not giants, teachers. Okay. We might become giants in other ways. Okay. Even as teachers, even as educationists, but not as per se, as teachers. This is the idea. Okay. So once you realize that this is what is happening and that education must be made more democratic. Okay. It's a democratic education that we think of. Okay. Now, once we realize this, we connect it to the introduction of technology. We think about how technology, in fact, aids this transformation in education. So I mentioned one way in which it does. It makes teaching learning more flexible. It enables students to search for materials themselves. Okay. So today morning, an interesting incident. A girl in the 7th standard, she wanted to know what the word Quran meant. Okay. In fact, her mother searched in the net for some time, and various explanations, etc., were offered. But the most fundamental, the most basic meaning was not found. Meaning is reading or recitation. Okay, closely related to the other word ikra. Anyway, only thing is you should know how to search for this. So just by typing an additional word, etymology. Okay. Similarly, if you look at the word Bible, it simply means a book. Okay. And many Christians would call their scripture Veda Pustakam. So Pustakam is the actual thing. Okay. It happened to be their scripture. So many other things. If you want to know what is happening in the world, if you want to know about why the floods occurred, why and how the floods occurred in Kerala in 2018, and how can it be related to the floods which occurred in 1924, what was called 99 Vellappakam. So students can simply log on, search for it, look at the evidence. So one interesting evidence I found, I am not an expert in meteorology, nor even a good reader, but I found that the total amount of rain measured in millimeters in 2014 was less than the rain that fell in Kozhikode district in 2019. Interesting, isn't it? There were no comparable floods in 2019, but rainfall was certainly more. So a student wants to look up such things. A student who wants to look up, for example, everybody would advise them to learn something about Shakespeare. So when they look up the net, they'll find several interesting bits of information. That Shakespeare was a professional playwright. In other words, he wrote for earning a living. Okay. And his earnings came from the pennies that ordinary people paid to watch. They were called, what are they called? I forgot the name, groundlings who sat on the ground. In Malayalam, they would be called Taratikettiya. So a student who wants to learn more about Shakespeare would find this. Anywhere, in any website would tell them that this is what happened. The Shakespeare was probably the first successful professional playwright. Okay. And this will explain many other things. Why, for example, in some place there is a large amount of what we call Thattu Polippen Tamasha. Okay. Not a serious, criticisms, but simply such slapstick comedy. Why? This was intended for the groundlings, people who paid a penny, workers, artisans who came to watch Shakespeare's plays. So once you enter this domain, once you enter this vast world of the net, I think you'll find many such bits of information, which you can use to construct knowledge. You would immediately flash forward to contemporary films. Why certain films are made to match a particular formula. Okay. Why such formulas are repeated. Okay. A critic like Linda Hutchin would say that the formulas keep being repeated because they are found to be successful. They have earned in the box office. So you can make a film like that. Again, it will definitely collect money. So on and so forth. Okay. When you talk about languages, when you think about why English has only 26 letters in its alphabet, why Malayalam has more, why a language called Hosa in Africa has more than 100 sounds. They don't have writing, but they have more than 100 sounds. All these interesting questions. So probably I think it is the more important thing is to unleash their creativity, unleash their curiosity about the world, about the subjects, about the things that they want to know. Okay. And this must be spontaneous. You can't force things on learners. I have discovered, okay, after 3 decades of teaching, you can't force anything on them. You can probably threaten them with poor grades in the internals. You can threaten them with performing badly in the end semester exams and losing out in the job market. Okay, not qualifying for NET. You can threaten them at every level. You can threaten them from primary classes onwards. But most probably it won't work much, except for a few handful of students who can be threatened for other things as well at home. Okay, so this I think is the in a very small presentation of this type. I think I have put across some ideas. And one more thing, I'll end with this. Okay, this is about people who are the high priests of technology. There are many people who think themselves the mediators, like the real priests who mediate between God and human beings, or gods and human beings. These priests also mediate. They mediate between technology. They mediate between merchants of technology and ordinary people, by telling you that all these are very complicated. Okay, the kind of pretense that you find in even in an ordinary DTP data entry person. Okay, so they'll tell you that it's complicated. Okay, they'll tell you that Google Meet is very complicated. They'll tell you Zoom is complicated. They'll tell you Moodle is very complicated. It's very difficult to learn. It takes a lot of time to do it. Okay, it's not for the lay learner. Where, as I said, you can find a 3-year-old girl logging onto the net and talking about no connectivity, and instead opting for the videos which she already has in the smartphone. So it's a myth that these are very, if this is complicated, everything is complicated. The food that you eat is complicated. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about the nutrition levels of the food that you eat 3 times a day? Most of you haven't. I myself have. Okay. When somebody tells me, see, you have a problem because you don't eat enough vegetables and fruits, Or if I eat vegetables and fruits, they'll tell you, no, you have a problem with proteins. Because your food, the food doesn't contain enough protein. That's why you have this problem. You have looked at it, because that is, I think, more complicated than, let us say, digital technology. Okay, how it works on your body, the kind of problems that you have. So, in fact, when we think of digital technology, we must also think of minimalist technology. Okay, a technology which anybody can use. Okay, technology which at least at the beginning anybody can use. Okay, a child can use a simple smartphone. Okay, you can use a tablet, with the price of which is coming down, falling rapidly. You can get one for less than 5,000 these days. Okay, and the kind of money that you invest on your children, think of the kind of money that you invest on your children. The ornaments that you buy for them from the market, gold ornaments, okay, for various purposes. And probably investment in digital technology is more productive, I would say, useful. And it's not much, you don't have to invest much. Okay, so it's not for the rich. Digital technology is not for the rich or for the cognoscenti, okay, the people who know all. No, it's for everybody. Thing is, for you to look at it in this manner, that anybody can function with minimalist technology. If you have a smartphone, even if you don't have a tablet or a lap, you can log on. I think many of my students have logged on with their smartphones. It's possible. So I think this is in a nutshell. I think I have offered some propositions which you can respond to. And I thank the principal of PKM College of Education, Madampam, Kannur, Dr. Rekha, other faculty members, for not only for allowing me to speak at this webinar, not only for asking me to deliver the keynote address, but also for inviting the Department of English as a participant in this webinar, as a co-host, organizer for this webinar. Thank you. So I think you can put your questions. I'll have a look at the chat box. Now you can put your questions. Meanwhile, I look at the chat box. Yes, please. Yeah, I'll start with the last question in the chat box. Yeah, there's one more coming up. This is by Lebin K. Yeah, I know Mr. Lebin, friend of mine. So, what do you think about the effectiveness of online tests at school level? Good question. Because this question came up recently when our MPhil entrance exams were postponed. This question was asked. This is about an online test at school level. Okay, so we had a problem with our MPhil entrance test because we had many of the departments had both objective and subjective questions to put to the candidates. So objective questions, no problem. You don't have any problem. You can just click for the right answer. But subjective or descriptive questions, you have to type the whole thing. So how many of you can type for, say, at a speed of more than 20 words a minute or even 10? Many students and also teachers use single fingers for typing. Okay, only their 4 fingers. That like the song, you will operate with only one of your fingers on each hand. Okay, so you normally it's a painful process, and you can't develop speed beyond a point. So apart from that, I don't think if students are taught to type, early in life, say, like this girl, 3-year-old girl, probably she is using the mobile keyboard. So if they are allowed to do that, and if they are allowed to do it systematically, you see, using all the 5 fingers. I learned to type at the age of 14, 15. I was a high school student. And of course, I was not a serious student. I went along with some other boys because some girls were also going for this typing classes. But it did me good. Okay. In a year's time, I could type very fast. Now I type at a reasonably good speed. Okay. So if students are taught typing at a very early age, I think online tests would be possible. Okay. They can attend both subjective and descriptive and objective questions. Okay, I'll start at the bottom here. What about the psychological bond that are supposed to be made in a classroom? Nimmy's kitchen. Yeah, whoever that is. The psychological bond. Actually, I didn't have the time to discuss that in detail. Yes, there is a psychological bond in the classroom. Okay, which I don't know can be replicated in an online situation. Yes, but on the other hand, we do a lot of mobile interaction these days. We have such applications, apps, by which we can see the other person's face. I can see all your faces. Okay, so this is already going on. Okay, the kind of psychological interaction that is supposed to come from close contact is being, I think, effectively replicated in a telephone conversation, where you can see the other speaker's face. Okay, so I don't know if it can be ruled out completely, you can say. Okay, and I saw some online classes where my wife is a teacher, school teacher. So she was conducting online classes for students of 7th standard. Some 40 of them were there. And I saw her calling out names. I heard her calling out the names. And when a name is called out, the student would immediately appear. Okay, switch on the mic and the camera and you can see that. And I recognized some of them, incidentally. Okay, I could immediately connect to them. I immediately remembered some of the characteristics for which they had become famous. Okay, talkative. Okay, violence in the classroom, all kinds of things. So you have a profile of a student, and when you connect with them online, that's in some ways you are actually bringing it alive. But I don't know how. I don't know if you can say that it is effective enough. I don't have a very clear answer, but I think it's possible. Yeah, what is the role of the teacher in the future? This is by Mr. Subramanian Nadarajan. Okay, the role of the teacher. Some of the things I mentioned, what I thought would be the role of the teacher in the future. And I don't think, because see what has happened now. The switch to online teaching learning. Now, I don't think that the conventional classes would return even after the pandemic is over. I don't think it will return. You can expect the same old classes to return. So you have been what is called baptized. Okay, you have been baptized in another particular paradigm. You can never think of returning to the old conventional classrooms minus all these facilities that we have introduced now. Yes, the classrooms might return. We might be able to discuss things in a classroom to teach in a classroom of 30 or 40 or more students. Okay, but it will never be the same classroom that you attended, that you taught in before the pandemic. Things will change. Things will never remain the same. So I think the role of the teacher in future would be different in any case. Not that the teacher will be effaced from the context, from teaching. In fact, there was a very famous statement coming about a century ago from a British educationist called Thomas Caritas. Caritas said that an ideal teacher is one who makes himself progressively unnecessary. Okay, so imagine this if it is applied logically. You teach for 3 months and you disappear. Okay, so how will you get your salaries? That is what most teachers would ask. So forget about the coming to the school or college and getting your salaries. But what Calicut meant was this: an ideal teacher should make the students self-reliant. That was the point. He wanted students to become self-reliant and not to continue their dependence on the teacher. Here, in fact, our tendency is to make the students perpetually dependent on the teacher, to exercise some kind of power on the students. In fact, this is not something that happens to students alone. This happens to children. This happens to children who never grow up, who are perpetually dependent upon their parents. Okay, so of course there are many jokes about such as the girl who rang up her mother on her first night. All kinds of such jokes circulate in our society. That's because we have not taught them to be self-reliant. You still need advice. You still need advice from your parents or teachers. So Calicut had made this point very clear, that a student ought to be ideally self-reliant and a teacher ought to be ideally self-effacing. You have to remove yourself from the context after a certain time. Okay, and let the students carry on things. I have seen some model classrooms where there's no teacher. The teacher would simply give a certain work and there will be a monitor in the classroom. A few better off students to help. A constructivist classroom. I saw a video. You can look up such videos on YouTube. You'll find many. They'll simply collect the work done, and some of the better students will be elected as monitors. They'll go around, look at what is happening to others, help them. In fact, a very conducive. I don't know if it's a very simulated video, but I have seen traces of that in some classrooms, experimental classrooms. Okay, where students are able to look after themselves. So, students at the early high school level, 8th standard or 9th standard. Yeah, so that's possible. So I think the role of the teacher would change. Yeah, it's a question from Parvati PG, my student. Yes, yeah, on the reluctance of teachers to use digital technology. Can we count it as a reluctance for survival in the field of teaching? Can we observe it as a fear among teachers that digital technology will replace their place? So I think I touched upon that in my presentation. Yeah, on the surface, it would replace teachers. It will replace many teachers from teaching. In fact, let me ask you another more distressing question. How many of our government employees will survive proper digitalization? How many employees would disappear automatically if things are digitalized? Although already the fear is widespread among employees that some of them would become redundant. Some of them may even be asked to take voluntary retirement. Things have not come to such a pass, but it might. Most governments are withdrawing from governance, various forms of governance. From economies, they've already withdrawn themselves to a large extent. From administration also, governments might withdraw. Okay, so what happens? Naturally, some people would be left out. If they hope to do the same kind of job, sitting at the same desk, looking at papers, striking of certain things, sending it to higher ups, instead of you can have 2 people doing the same thing where 10 people used to. This is a fact. You can't think of it. The only thing is the other 8 will not be jobless. The other 8 have jobs cut out for them, as I said. Everybody is employable. Even I would say people who are differently abled in many ways, who are mentally challenged, are also employable. We have seen that. Only thing is that they should be given employment. They should be employment should be discovered for them. Employment should be found for them. That's all. So definitely the fear is there at large. Let me see. More questions have come. This is near the here at the bottom. Yeah, here is a question, interesting question. Is technology a Frankenstein's monster? Niyati Pavitra, my student. So nuclear bombs are man-made and they are destroying whole communities. Similarly, she asked, would machines take over our society? Okay, replacement of human labor by machines. So my question is, what kind of work will machines do? Are human beings completely, replaceable? That's the question. I don't think that will happen, at least in the near future, unless again you keep large numbers of people semi-literate. That is also a secret agenda for many governments and companies to keep certain people undereducated. Okay, to give them, to stop them at a point. It's done in civilized, it's done in Western countries, where after a certain level, 8th standard, I think they are asked to specialize. So if you get in somewhere, if you have some basic, if you have the ability to leap over others, okay. And what happens to you if you reach up to 10th standard and you have poor grades? You are asked to join the army. Yeah, the armies are being valorized. This is a bad time to talk about the army. So in America, if you don't land any job after 10th standard, you have a free job waiting for you in the army. You join the army and do all kinds of things. Sometimes you are sent to trouble spots, but after 3 years or 5 years, you get you can leave the army and you'll get some kind of small jobs. So certain jobs are reserved for you. You become an accountant at somewhere if you know enough accounting, or at least you get in as a security person at somewhere. So such small jobs are given and you are satisfied with it. You can watch TV, smoke, have a beer occasionally, marry some, if you're a man, marry some sales girl or somebody at your level of employment, and you live happily ever after. So there is this particular agenda for keeping some people undereducated. Okay. But if everybody has access to education, digital education, if everybody has jobs outside, okay, I think look at the number of things we have to do. We haven't yet found a vaccine for the virus. Okay, research is going on, fine. We haven't found ways to protect people. A job which needs thousands, if not lakhs of volunteers on the stage. And even if they are given salaries, good salaries, the country gains. The country is in a bad shape today because of a tottering economy. So imagine if we have a big cadre of people, volunteers, who can do such things, who can keep civil militia, who can do civil militia's job. Okay, preventing people from unnecessarily. We don't have enough police or army personnel to do all this. So jobs are out there. All kinds of jobs, productive jobs, research, surveys for all the 130 crore people in India. Only thing is whether you have the ability and the will to work on how to locate these jobs, how to put people to these jobs. So ultimately, I think that is the thing. Okay, machines I don't think will take over. If at all they do, then there will be a number of people who would have to be massacred. Okay. They don't have a job, they can't be fed. They don't, or they will survive on doles, unemployment insurance. They'll do nothing. Hobos, tramps. I don't think the world will come to that plight. Okay. We have, yeah. Pradeep Abraham's question. The technology, the introduction of technology has had this bad effect, he would say. During the last decade, there were efforts to make the curriculum of the schools in Kerala activity-oriented and learner-centered. But for the last few years, due to the advent of smart classrooms equipped with technology, the students seem to become passive audience of some videos or PowerPoint presentations projected in the classroom, something like a Man Ki Baat. How can we tackle this situation? Yeah, I think I touched upon that also. It's not simply the use of technology that matters, but how the use of technology changes the fundamental character of a classroom. See, our classes are always like this. Here, a teacher is replaced by a video. That's all. A teacher would do the same thing. A teacher would speak for 45 minutes or an hour with no interaction. And the students will simply stare at the teacher. Okay. In Malayalam, you can say, why nokirikkum? Now, of course, you have to say, mask nokirikkum. So this is what is happening. The students will simply look at the teacher full 45 minutes or 1 hour, no interaction take place. So here in Pradeep's question, it's clear that technology has replaced the teacher. Okay, that's all. That's the only difference. The character of the classroom has not changed. We have a question here, Rosemary Joseph. Do you think the use of technology might mislead children from their learning exposure to social media live? I think I've touched upon that. Okay. Technology as such does not mislead. It is the way we put technology to use. Okay. You can put it to good use, you can put it to bad use. Somebody near the talked about nuclear weapons. Yes, nuclear weapons was a bad development. And so, I think Oppenheimer, the person who discovered this phenomenon, expresses regret that he ever touched upon it later on, after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yeah. So it depends upon what you're doing with it. Social media or any kind of technology. Okay. Depends upon how you use it. Arish Thiru. Technology. Will technology reach students? According to me, classroom teaching is very effective rather than online teaching. Do you think the knowledge is reach the students clearly through okay? I think I have touched upon that. It's possible with attendant problems, with certain drawbacks. Reaching out to students is certainly possible, as we saw in this case of the 3-year-old girl responding to a teacher who was telling a story. Do you think online teaching is more effective than normal classroom teaching, even though during COVID? Yeah, COVID-19 is the immediate reason why we have introduced online teaching learning in this large scale. But I think even after, I already said that, even after the pandemic disappears, I think they will stay with us because it's a technology we are familiarizing ourselves with, and it's not going to go away. Once its uses are discovered, once its effectiveness is discovered, once the way it can intervene in our educational system is discovered, I don't think it will go away. Online assessments, question by Professor T. Ajit. Is it possible to conduct online assignments for differently able? Yeah. Good question. Yeah. In fact, differently able students. By differently able students, I think the participant means visually challenged learners. Okay. Visually challenged learners or the auditorily challenged learners, or we call deaf and dumb people. So they have certain software which would help them along. Okay, visually challenged learners can access videos through certain apps, which will not only read out what is written, but also describe videos. I think, have you come across this? I discovered this by accident. There are certain apps which will describe a video. For example, I can see some of you here. So I'll say, okay, I can see Dr. Rekha here. She is wearing glasses. She's wearing a sari. Also, she's sitting in a room, okay, which has a white wall. All kinds of. I can see a cupboard over her head. So all these are descriptions of visuals. So this app would describe such visuals to the visually challenged learner. Almost a complete. You have this app at work on Facebook. Okay, sometimes you'll see. Sometimes you can see the writing also, which is a carryover from the app. It will say there are 3 people standing. There are 2 items of furniture. So this app can say it better. And there can be human voiceovers. Okay, said with about 3 times the speed of normal speech. Visually challenged people can listen to more rapidly spoken sentences. Okay, so there you are. You have such apps. For the deaf and dumb, you have sign language presentations. Sign language is used in a large way. And sign language, we must remember, is not an ad hoc language. It's a complete language. It has all the properties of normal human language. You have such things like that. I used to think that the sign language would not have tenses. Like you cannot say, I went there. Okay, but sign language can say that. In sign language, you can say that by combining signs, by saying one sign for go and another sign for past, or even past participle. You can have a past participle construction in sign language. So sign language is a very effective language. So you can use such apps, such methods for on teaching, learning online. It's quite possible. This is a question by Mr. Palani Kumar. He's talking about the glitches that happen. Okay, sometimes even in lab, tab, and mobiles, default problems at the time of working on it for the new learners of Digitech, which makes them to feel distress and angry. Our systems might malfunction, but everything malfunctions. Okay, your simple cooker in which you cook vegetables, dal, or pulses or rice malfunctions. You have seen that. Okay, sometimes you will hear a big sound, and when you rush to the kitchen, you will find that the lid is almost blown out, and your kanji or paripu, everything has come out. Okay, so glitches. No system is 100% perfect. Digitally organized systems can also function relatively well once you are used to it and once you know the basics. Take this example which I gave you of pulses cooking in a cooker. If you add half a teaspoon of oil, are there people here who have cooked? There are many who have cooked pulses in a cooker. So if you add half a spoon of oil, they tell you it won't boil over like this. It won't exert unnecessary pressure on the valve. Yeah, simple. So similarly, you have such tips for use in technology. Okay, don't press too many keys at a time. Don't give the computer so many tasks at a time. Let the computer finish task number 1 before you give task. If you give too many tasks, the computer will stall. Everybody knows that. All such devices have problems. They'll stall if you overwork them, or if you don't know how to handle them. So if you don't remove files from your temp folder, after a few days or weeks, the computer will slow down. Okay, and you don't know what is happening. Okay, it's as simple as that. If you remove and if you don't keep too many files on your desktop, computer will work reasonably well. Every single device, your mobile, to remove unnecessary videos that come from WhatsApp once in a while. Of course, you have in a smartphone, you have alerts. It will tell you that your storage is running out. Please remove unnecessary files. So, all these systems malfunction, but at the same time, these systems can be managed. Okay. Technology can be managed. I think I should use that word, managed. Technology can be managed. Okay, like everything else. So I'm just asking you a very simple question. Can I? How well do you manage your married life? How well do you manage your relationship with your children? Okay. Is it perfect? Or are there glitches? Okay. So somebody said that unless you have at least one quarrel a day, there is no stability in a marital relationship. Of course, joke, of course, but often true. So managing your problems, not just technology, managing your personal life can be as complicated as managing your technology. Okay, let me see. Yeah, there are quite a few here. Learning is this is from Ms. Srija JL. Learning is the acquisition of habit, knowledge, and attitude. I think moral values can't be developed only through online class. Do you agree? Yes, of course. Moral values have to be developed not from normal classes either. Okay. You don't develop all your moral values at school. I don't think so. You develop your moral values by interacting in society at large, from your neighbors, from your friends, even from the market. If you buy vegetables from the market, and if the shopkeeper tells you, if you are short of money, or the shopkeeper is short of change, you take each other on trust. Okay. So when I buy a paper from a newspaper stall, sometimes I don't have change. Okay. So I pay him 10 rupees or so, 20 rupees, whatever currency I have, and then I collect the change the next day. Similarly, if I forget to bring change, the shopkeeper simply hands me the paper and says, you can give it tomorrow. Fine. So this kind of value, this kind of trust that you develop in society, you learn not from home or from your school, but from a practical experience, what you experience in the market. So many other things. Getting into a bus. Okay. Vacating your seat for old or disabled people. Okay. So values you learn not necessarily from the classroom, but from society at large, but also from the classroom. Yes. And also digitally. If you watch a good video of, I think all of you would have seen that video, very popular. It went viral, of a beggar who put up a board, okay, talking about his disability, and people dropping coins, and suddenly one day he removed the board, okay, and still coins kept coming, and then he kept another board saying that I am not sitting here for alms, I'm sitting here because I am used to the sunlight. Okay, so such a video definitely teaches you certain values. Okay. Orientation to parents about on this is Sri Parvati AB, my student. Orientation to parents, definitely, not just to teachers, on how teaching learning takes place, how all these things are done, how teaching involves moral values, how teaching learning involves management of technology. Yeah, there is a case for orientation for parents about online classes. They should be alerted on the possible and the impossible. Okay, as I said in the beginning, technology is not the answer to everything. Okay, technology helps you along, but it does not solve all the problems. So such things about technology must be told to parents. They must be alerted to it. So of course, they can take their feedback also, what they feel about technology. Okay, then what do we have here? Digital learning in the future. What about the physical health of children? Again, my student, Parvati PG. Will digital technology make students couch potatoes? That is the idea that Parvati puts across. Yes. If they are at their digital devices all the time, and if they forget to go about their physical activities, play, okay, half an hour of football, or some game in the morning. Okay, there is no substitute for that. And even teachers in China, once upon a time, teachers were asked to work for half an hour in their gardens, vegetable gardens. It's both good for your health and also productive. Okay, imagine the number of vegetables that you would cultivate, because we are short of vegetables. Kerala is short of vegetables. Part of our need we satisfy by importing from neighboring states. So if you work for half an hour every day, in your vegetable garden. It's certainly a productive work. It will solve shortage of vegetables. Okay, so all kinds of things where physical health is important. So if online teaching becomes not just teaching, but a kind of avenue for simply passing, it leads you to simply an avenue for perpetual entertainment. Some people develop this habit. They never leave their mobiles. Okay, they always have it in hand. They go on browsing various sites. They go on watching videos. They go on watching things which come to them through WhatsApp and other social media sites. This, I think, is, as Parvati pointed out, not such a good thing. PT periods must definitely be taken. Sports and extracurricular activities must not be abandoned because you have to pick up your digital skills. Not at all, definitely. Another question by Anu Ajitan, Mr. Anu Ajitan, talking about teacher as a felicitator. Okay, can the teacher be just a facilitator? I think I have touched upon that. I think that's all. I don't see any more questions. If there are any more questions, I'll take a few. Okay, I think I've sort of monopolized this session, haven't I? Which is against the very principles I talked about. Okay, there must be more interaction. I don't know if it's possible. Probably with a more vibrant net connection, you can go on firing questions. But I think it's still possible. I think I've attended to all the questions, suggestions, comments put to me. If there are more, please tell me. Yes. If there are no more questions, yeah. Is there any other question coming up? Can you hear me? If there are no more questions, can I call it a day? It was a very pleasant experience for me. As I said, this is a truthful statement. This is my first webinar presentation. And probably I've answered one question, that it's possible to interact effectively over the cyberspace like this and still make some kind of a statement about certain things. I don't know how audible I am. Somebody sent a message saying that the voice breaks. Here, I don't think there's a problem here. Probably at your end, there might be a problem. Here, I haven't experienced any break. But apart from such glitches, as somebody pointed out, I think it works very well. Okay. All right. So shall I call it a day? Thank you all. And I'll hand over to the president of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. And thank you, participants, for your active involvement. Now I invite Jomal Jose, the student coordinator of this webinar, for the formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Jomal.
Thank you, GB. Hello, good afternoon. So now we are drawing this to a close. So what has been an extremely insightful and thought-provoking webinar of contemporary relevance. And now my duty rests in formally proposing the vote of thanks. And let me take this opportunity to extend words of gratitude to the principal of PKM College of Education, Madampam, Dr. Jesse NC, who presided over our inaugural session. Thank you, Dr. Jesse, for always being so supportive in the academic pursuits of the entire student community. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Vijayan K for inaugurating this webinar and inspiring us with his pertinent views and powerful words. Thank you, sir. And so this webinar has been immensely fruitful thanks to the man at the helm of affairs, the head of the Department of English at the University of Calicut, Dr. M. Sharif. So he has enlightened us throughout the course of this webinar with his insightful thoughts on the use of technology in pedagogy, and thereby realizing the scope of this webinar to its fullest. And so he has been the master craftsman who coordinated the technical aspects, and he has guided us throughout the course of organizing this webinar. I can thank you enough. Thank you, sir. And thanks is due to Dr. Ega Kayar, the Associate Professor in English at IPSC Coordinator at PKM College. And she was the first one to conceive this seminar of this scale, and she delivered the welcome speech. Thank you, ma'am, for all the inspiration and support. And next, I would like to extend words of gratitude to Sister Christina and other staff members at PKM College, as well as the Calicut University English Department, who are providing all the necessary technical support in ensuring that this webinar took place without much glitches. Thank you all for the support you offered. Then I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. Tibi Babu for being a wonderful host. Thank you, Ms. Tibi. And finally, I would like to thank all the participants who took part in this webinar from across the nation. And you guys made this webinar a fruitful and successful one. Thank you all for your active participation and presence. Let me conclude. Thank you.